Allen Lund Company, 47 years young and a proud sponsor, wishes OOIDA all the best as you celebrate 50 years.
OOIDA, representing America's truckers since 1973, presents Landline Now with your host, Mark Reddick.
68 miles an hour? Not so fast. For a few hours on Monday, we thought we knew what speed the Federal Motor Carrier Safety Administration had chosen to cap heavy trucks at. But then, hours later, they backtracked and said that the 68 miles an hour limit was released in error and that the rulemaking process is still ongoing. So what's going on here? We'll get some clarity, courtesy of OOIDA President Todd Spencer and the association's Director of Legislative Affairs, Bryce Mongeon. From carving wood to carving pork, the Guilty by Association Truck Show offered up a lot of unique exhibits. Landline Now's Ashley Blackford has more from the show. And finally, 2 states will soon increase the amount truckers pay in fuel tax. Both Alabama and New Jersey have increases on the schedule. Scott Thompson will get the details from our state legislative expert, Keith Goebel. But first, the news with Scott Thompson.
Thanks, Mark. Our top story today, 68 miles per hour, not so fast. On Monday, we told you about FMCSA seemingly announcing that it had chosen 68 miles per hour as the cap for its proposed speed limiter mandate for heavy trucks. But then hours later, the agency backtracked, telling Landline that a mistake was made and that no top speed had yet been determined. An FMCSA spokesperson said this is a significant rulemaking notice that requires review by the Office of Management and Budget before any supplemental notice can be published, adding that a limit of 68 miles per hour is one of the options being considered. So that leaves us where we were on Sunday with one exception. FMCSA still plans to provide more information in that supplemental notice of proposed rulemaking, projected for release on December 29th. However, the last time a speed limiter proposal was sent to OMB for review back in 2015, that review took 15 months. Generally speaking, unless the agency announces details in a press release, the first time we usually know specifics is once a rulemaking hits the Federal Register. But whatever that speed may end up being, OOIDA will fight it. That's because the association has a lot of problems with any sort of speed limiter mandate. OOIDA President Todd Spencer says simply it would make roads less safe.
The frustrating part of this for drivers is that, okay, they have to live with the ramifications of whatever rules that these folks come up with. And of course, they live in a real world where they have to interact with other traffic and things like that. And this really isn't a complicated issue. The ideal speed policy for any agency to take, whether it be federal or state or local, is do something, support policies that try to keep traffic moving at or close to the same speed. You want to try to minimize interactions.
There are 2 bills in Congress right now, one in the House and one in the Senate, that would stop FMCSA from implementing a speed limiter mandate. They continue to garner support but are a long way from passage. Much more on this issue a little later in the program, when we'll try to figure out what happened with FMCSA releasing this new information and then pulling it right back. Diesel prices were down for the first time in nearly 2 months last week, according to the latest data from the Energy Information Administration. The EIA said the national average dropped nearly a nickel to $4.58 a gallon. That breaks 9 straight weeks of increases, over which time the average spiked more than 82 cents. Prices dipped last week in 7 of the 10 regions EIA tracks. We'll see where things end up by the end of this week. ProMiles.com said the national average went up Tuesday morning by about a cent to $4.54, with only 2 regions showing price decreases. There was a 10% decrease in load volume last week, according to DAT. Landline Now's Ashley Blackford has the details.
Robert Rouse with DAT said it saw load-to-truck ratios decrease for vans and reefer for the second week in a row.
And lastly, when we think about rates and seeing how they are, last week we talked a little bit about how they were nearing the bottom. But one of the things we looked at is the national broker to carrier spot rates without fuel actually decreased across all 3 equipment types, with only flatbed seeing a little bit of a bump just because we added fuel back in. When we look at the rate averages over the last 6 weeks, they've been pretty consistent, but last week they were actually below their 6-week average, which means we're still searching for that bottom of the market.
The number of trucks on the DAT load board decreased by about 2% to 375,000 trucks. Rouse said that even though DAT has seen carriers leaving the market, this is the second highest number of available trucks in the past 7 years. For Landline Now, I'm Ashley Blackford.
Thanks, Ashley. One electronic logging device has made it back onto FMCSA's list of approved devices 1 week after being removed. FMCSA has reinstated the KSK ELD. The agency said it placed the device on the revoked list on September 15th because it failed to meet the minimum requirements, specifically the regulation requiring that an electronic logging device without a printer be designed so that the display may be reasonably viewed by an authorized safety official without the official entering the commercial motor vehicle. No word on why KSK ELD status was changed, but devices can be added back to the approved list if the ELD provider corrects all identified deficiencies. The CBS Evening News took a crack at the truck parking crisis on Monday night. In a report, the issue was approached from a safety point of view through the lens of recent deadly crashes involving vehicles slamming into semis parked on the side of the road. OOIDA board member Danny Schnautz, president of Clark Freight Lines in Houston, was among those interviewed in the CBS News piece. He noted that truck drivers don't have much choice when it comes to where they park because there just aren't enough spaces.
How hard is it to find a place to park for one of these things? It can be from easy, a small percent of the time, to impossible, a large percent of the time.
Schnautz also said that hours of service regulations often force drivers' hands.
Well, first of all, we have to be safe. So we tell drivers to realize that cutting their day short is better than putting someone in an unsafe position.
CBS News also spoke with Secretary of Transportation Pete Buttigieg, who repeated what he told us recently, that the truck parking crisis is a priority. The report mentioned the tens of millions of dollars in federal grant money going to states to address the problem. It also mentioned the Truck Parking Safety Improvement Act in the House and the Senate, which would provide $755 million for truck parking nationwide. Those bills have gained bipartisan support, but have yet to gain the traction they'll need to get passed and be signed into law. Several dozen new truck parking spots are opening up throughout Ohio. It's a result of 3 new Sheetz locations in the state. The new store in New Concord, opening Thursday, adds 29 truck parking spots. Another in North Jackson adds another 59, and the third in Springfield includes 32 new truck parking spaces. Both of those open for business on Saturday. 5 off-ramps in Carson City, Nevada are now equipped with wrong-way detection systems. The Nevada DOT said they're all on Interstate 580. The system uses radar and closed-circuit cameras to automatically detect vehicles entering in the wrong direction. 2 sets of red flashing wrong-way signs are then activated. These are just the latest systems to be installed in Nevada. A previous study led to 37 wrong-way driver detection systems being installed statewide. The DOT reported that 84% of wrong-way vehicles detected by the system safely turned around before entering the freeway. And finally, a Wisconsin-based trucking company will host some very special guests this coming weekend. Paper Transport will welcome in 100 Girl Scouts to its headquarters in Green Bay on September 30th. It's a chance for them to learn about the trucking industry, the supply chain, possible careers in the industry, and practicing safety around tractor trailers. The event is being held in conjunction with Michelin and the Women in Trucking Association. Participating Girl Scouts will get an opportunity to earn a Women in Trucking patch. That's Landline Now News for today. I'm Scott Thompson.
Thanks, Scott. Next, we'll get the latest on speed limiters from OOIDA President Todd Spencer and the association's Director of Legislative Affairs, Bryce Mongeon. And Ashley Blackford has more from the Guilty by Association Truck Show. We'll be back in a moment. I'm Mark Reddick, and this is Landline Now.
Thanks for listening. Be sure to like and subscribe. If you want more content, go to landline.media to get updated news, information, and archived editions of our show. Once again, that's landline.media.
Firestone tires are for more of everything. More miles for every tire dollar, and more confidence in your fleet. At Firestone, we help fleets save with dependable value. Find your local Firestone dealer today at firestonetire.com/dealer.
Ready to make more money? Use a better load board. For a limited time, get 50% off Truckstop Load Board Pro. Just go to truckstop.com/go and enter promo code READY2023 when you purchase Load Board Pro.
For several hours on Monday, we thought we knew what speed the Federal Motor Carrier Safety Administration wanted to cap heavy trucks at. The info came via the DOT's September Significant Rulemaking Report, in which FMCSA said 68 miles an hour would be the proposed limit. But then, hours later, the agency backtracked. Joining us in Studio A with reaction and hopefully some answers, OOIDA President Todd Spencer. Todd, good to see you.
Glad to be part of the show. Some answers. Yeah, right.
I like that. I like that laugh there. And joining us on the phone there, you heard him laugh a little bit as well, OOIDA Director of Legislative Affairs, Bryce Mongeon. Bryce, thanks for joining us.
Yes, absolutely.
Todd, we'll start with you. You laughed there, and I think we're going to get more of that here because if you don't laugh, you cry, I guess. I don't know. Again, we heard 68 miles an hour yesterday. Then FMCSA essentially said, just kidding. We jumped the gun there. We've got a few more ducks to put in a row before we can actually go down this path. I'm just going to ask you flat out, what do you think happened here?
I think this is really a matter of, I think they say there's too many cooks spoil the soup. And I think in this particular instance, the agency maybe is trying to consider the views of everybody that has an opinion. And, of course, there are some opinions that have, in my opinion, that have more merit than others. And the frustrating part of this for drivers is that, okay, they have to live with the ramifications of whatever rules that these folks come up with. And of course, they live in a real world where they have to interact with other traffic and things like that. And this really isn't a complicated issue. The ideal speed policy for any agency to take, whether it be federal or state or local, is do something, support policies that try to keep traffic moving at or close to the same speed. You want to try to minimize interactions. To the extent that you can minimize interactions, you will improve highway safety because there'll be fewer of them vehicles running into each other. And any kind of policy that these folks come up with that basically increases the likelihood of interactions is not going to be good for highway safety. And, the reality of this for professional truckers, I mean, this is where the rubber meets the road. You guys are the folks out there that are actually interacting with others on the road every day. You want to be able to adjust your speed to minimize interactions. And sometimes that means speeding up a little bit to get out of someone's way, to make room for someone else. I mean, these are things that you do dozens, if not hundreds of times every day. And for policies to take away that ability, well, that just makes no sense.
Yeah, and then we've got what happened on Monday here, kind of adding to things not making sense because, again, we had the 68 mile per hour, we thought at least, put out there by FMCSA, and then they pulled it away. Bryce, I'll kind of ask you the same question here that I asked Todd, and we'll get into some of the stuff you said as well there, Todd. But just what do you think happened here yesterday? I haven't seen anything like this in terms of the information being put out there and then being pulled back. What did you think when you saw this yesterday?
Yeah, I mean, it kind of just sounds like someone screwed up, I don't know if it's much more complicated than that. I kind of always think that usually the simplest explanation is best. So that's what I'm inclined to think. Maybe it's possible that they really intended to try and they tried to move forward with this document and putting that 68 miles per hour out there, and then saw the blowback in it pretty immediately and pulled it back. But I would think that's unlikely. Certainly not impossible, but I don't think we're ever going to know for sure what happened. But regardless of whether it was intentional or whether it was a mistake, I think it just confirms what we've been saying all along, is that FMCSA is not capable of handling a rulemaking like this. I mean, this is, as Todd laid out, a really serious safety issue and something where regulators should be listening to the people who make their living out on the road and driving safely. And if they can't keep this straight, it really doesn't inspire confidence. My concern is this seems like language that they had ready to go somewhere. So whether or not it was intentional, somewhere over there, it seems like they are ready to go forward with this 68 mile an hour limit. And so my concern is this kind of something they've already landed on or already decided on? And, we're just getting ready to go through the next steps in the regulatory process, but accidentally showed their hands. It's tough to know. We know there were previous comments made by officials at FMCSA when they were talking about this rulemaking process. They were asked about all the comments that they received from truckers, and they basically said, we've gotten a lot of love letters from them. We're working through them, and we're going to get to this final rulemaking. So for people who felt dismissed after that, this only makes it worse. So whatever happened, it is not good for FMCSA.
Yeah, and that's a frustrating thing. And you mentioned the comments there from the previous comment period they had. I think it was more than 15,000, which the overwhelming majority of those were, from truck drivers who expressed concerns, much like you did, Todd, about what this would do for roadways out there, and especially for safety. That's a frustrating part. You mentioned frustrating. There's a lot of frustrations about this, Todd. One of them being that there were so many comments, there was so much feedback, and yet, as you kind of said there, Bryce, it does feel like FMCSA's mind is made up on this. However, we're still months, perhaps years away from whatever they decide on doing here, Todd. The time now to really put pressure on FMCSA and to put pressure on lawmakers to support the bills in the House and the Senate that would stop FMCSA from doing this, it really is now. This is a time for a full-on blitz, Todd.
Buddy, you're absolutely right on target. And just FYI, guys, we set up our fightingfortruckers.com website. On that website, you go there easily. You'll see an opportunity to communicate with your lawmakers on two very important pieces of legislation. The first one is the Senate Bill S. 2671. The second is the House Bill H.R. 3039. What that legislation would do is it simply cuts off the funding for further consideration on behalf of FMCSA for implementing speed limiters. And it's totally appropriate legislation for Congress to be moving on. Back in 1995, Congress voted to get totally out of the business of regulating speeds and give that authority back to the states. The states were eager to take it back, and for the most part, there are examples where we think they don't use the best common sense, but for the most part, the states are in a much better position to implement, to determine for themselves what would be the safest policies within their state. And to kind of cut to the chase, over 30 states have maximum speed limits of 70 miles per hour or higher. So obviously, how much when FMCSA picks a slower speed for trucks, basically that kind of shows how out of touch they are when it comes to what really goes on our highways in America, and certainly turning any kind of a policy that turns trucks into rolling roadblocks and basically that's what would happen with this. It's simply not good safety policy. And from the standpoint of people that drive trucks, Jiminy, making it harder to do the job that a job that is absolutely critical to every part of our society today, making it harder for drivers to do that job safely just simply doesn't make any sense whatsoever.
Yeah, Bryce, kind of that point, and I'll piggyback off of what Todd said. It sure does feel like FMCSA has kind of made its mind up. We don't know if it's going to be 68 or 60 or 70 or the number, as you kind of said there, Todd, doesn't really make a difference in the long run because you're taking away the freedom of a truck driver to adapt to traffic conditions. It really does feel like maybe the best path forward here, aside from possible legal action way down the line here, would be these bills in the House and the Senate. And the House sponsor, Representative Josh Burkeen, has mentioned state rights in particular with this. Where do you see this moving forward now in terms of the fight? Where are we going to see this fight take place?
Yeah, I mean, it's going to be on a couple different fronts, and certainly one of the important ones is on the legislative front. And I want to reiterate what Todd said, the importance of contacting your lawmakers and letting them know what this issue means for you. On this issue, when I've been talking to lawmakers and their staff, what I have heard, even more so than other times, is can you get some of your members back in the state or back in the district to contact us and let us know about this issue? And I think what's happening is staffers hear this and they realize this isn't a good idea. For any of them that have driven across the country, they don't want to be stuck behind trucks going 60 miles an hour. But at the same time, there's a lot of issues that lawmakers have to consider, dozens on any given week. But they get it and they're saying, help us help you. If we hear from the people that we represent, this is a problem, that helps me elevate this up to the boss, up to the senator, up to the representative. So by letting lawmakers know, that can help to get this over the finish line. And I also think it's important, too, because we get it, the frustration that we hear from truckers when they basically say, I don't know that this is going to make a difference when FMCSA already has their mind up. And FMCSA is not helping themselves by doing things like this. With that said, we can't give up the fight on this, and Congress is, even more than the regulatory agencies, a place where lawmakers can make a difference because they can step in, pass a law, and put an end to this. There's no Administrative Procedures Act. There's no regulatory hoops to jump through. Congress can have the final say on this by stopping the agency. So that is why contacting your lawmakers is so important.
Yeah, and get your family and friends as well to do it as well, because it's going to affect everybody out there. And again, the more calls they get and letters and emails and however else you contact them, the better. Real quick here, Bryce, December 29th was mentioned in that report. Is that the kind of the date we're looking at now in terms of really actually getting more concrete information?
Yes. So technically, what FMCSA did, or I'm sorry, what DOT did yesterday was a big, long update of all the regulations they're working on. And so we're expecting to see the next proposed rulemaking at the end of December.
We'll circle that and wait to see what we find out. Todd, we got about a minute left here. I did want to give you a chance to kind of give some final thoughts because I know you've been thinking a lot about this over the past 24 hours in particular, but really for decades now. So, I mean, as you see what's playing out here and kind of the road we're headed down, some final thoughts from you.
Hey, listen, and for the immediate future going forward, lawmakers are going to be focused very much on budgets and extending the budgets and extending spending and things like that. This particular measure that we're talking about, S-2671 in the Senate, H.R. 3039, these are perfect for this kind of discussion because what it'll do is it'll save some money by basically saying, quit focusing in areas that aren't productive, cut off funding for that area, and move on. So, yes, go to fightingfortruckers.com. Within a few minutes, you can communicate with both your senators and your your member of the U.S. Congress. So get it done, guys. Have your say.
It really is just a few clicks. You mentioned the website there, fightingfortruckers.com. Check it out for yourself and check it often and weigh in and let your lawmakers know where you stand on this. Todd, Bryce, I'm not sure we answered all the questions out there, but I think we answered some, so we appreciate your help there.
Thank you.
Glad to.
We're coming up fast on a break, but hold on tight. There's more Landline Now right around the corner.
Forget misaccuracy, weigh your truck on a CAT scale.
When you weigh on a CAT scale, you get a no excuses guarantee. You can now save time weighing by using your smartphone. Find out more at weightmytruck.com.
Since you started, what you've loved about trucking is the freedom. Heading out on your favorite route, a good driving song, and thinking about truck insurance. Well, maybe not that last one. That's why we're here. At OOIDA, we have a full range of truck insurance products, expert advice, and great customer service, helping you get the right coverage for your operation. Go to OOIDA.com because your job is to drive. Our job is to help with everything else.
Landline Now, welcome back. The Guilty by Association Truck Show brings lots of unique exhibitors to the 3-day event. This year, one of those exhibits was wood carving. Scott Winford is a chainsaw artist who I spoke with during the show.
Talk to me, how did you get started in doing this?
Well, I was a sales rep for a chainsaw company. We used to hire a guy to come to shows and do this. And I was doing a show in Ottawa, Kansas, and he didn't show up. He got sick, so I just tried my hand at it. Carved a beautiful eagle, the first thing I carved. My wife said I carved a chicken, so maybe it wasn't that beautiful.
I mean, a chicken would still be impressive. Yeah, I guess that was my first question. How do you find out you're good at this? But yours was kind of by mistake, maybe?
Yeah, not really. It's just it's kind of trial and error, and just doing a bunch of them, because I wasn't very good at first, and I'm not artistic. I can't draw. I can barely draw my name. I mean, that's how bad I am. But it's just practice and staying with it. I've been doing it for 36 years. So.
Can you kind of walk me through what's the process of it? Like what kind of wood do you use, and what's kind of do you plan it out in your head beforehand, or is it kind of as you go?
Well, as far as wood, if I have a preference, it's something soft, like pine or catalpa or ash. But I do a lot of tree stump carvings, and of course, it's whatever the wood is. But as far as planning, basically you look at the size of the wood and what you want to make, and then you figure out how big of a bear or eagle or whatever you can put on that size log. And then you just start blocking it out, trying to keep it in proportion. The only thing I'll use on this would be a sander. I do a little bit of sanding, and then I've got a tool that actually burns the eyes in, because you can't make a round eye with a chainsaw. So
What happens if you make a mistake?
You just pray you don't make a mistake. Some mistakes you can repair, and some you can't. You know, a lot of carvers do this, just individual pieces, but not a lot of carvers do stump carving jobs because there's no margin of error. I mean, you've got one piece of wood, you got to make it work, you know. So.
And is each one, would you say it's all unique? They all kind of have a different look to them?
Yeah, I'm not good enough to make them, the same every time. Yeah, they're all a little bit different. There'll be similarities, but.
What would you say would be your most favorite thing to carve?
Probably eagles. I think I'm probably better at eagles.
Why is that?
I guess just done more of them,
And what's it like, usually you had a bit of a crowd here earlier, having people watch you do it. Is that intimidating, or do you enjoy that?
It's not really intimidating. It's just kind of pressure to make something happen quickly, because if you're doing something tedious and the people can't see something happening, they'll just go away,
Now I'm curious, you've got multiple chainsaws. Why?
I've got 6 out here. I actually own 22 chainsaws, but they all have their purpose. The bigger ones are for doing the blocking out. Then the smaller ones are for the more detail work.
Interesting. You said you've been doing this for 36 years? Do you travel around and do shows?
A few. I only do, this will be like my 3rd show this year. I've got a full-time job, so.
Do you still sell chainsaws or no?
I still sell chainsaws and lawnmowers and all kinds of stuff.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
And do you paint them yourself?
My wife usually does it.
So you got a team project.
Yeah, she's my assistant.
And do you sell these just online or at your shows, or?
Yeah, I've got a Facebook page, Arkansas Chainsaw Sculptures, and I stay busy. Actually, I just do these shows to get the stump carving jobs because they're more lucrative and there's less competition, fewer people doing it. So,
what do you enjoy most about it?
I guess the sense of accomplishment once you're done. When you've done something you're really pleased with, you're not pleased with everything, but.
Hundreds of unique trucks were at G-Bats, but it was a trailer that caught the attention of many. Craig Carter owns Meat Lover, a livestock trailer turned into a food trailer to serve up barbecue.
Come enjoy one of the top 10 barbecue pit masters in the United States as Craig Carter of CC Barbecue brings his 53-foot mobile kitchen to the Guilty by Association Truck Show on Friday and Saturday. You can find this amazing rig and a ton of delicious barbecue directly in front of 4 state trucks. Come out, enjoy the sights, the menu, the aromas and flavors as he prepares a whole hog on site and right there in front of your very eyes. Come hungry and come ready to have some fun at the largest big rig party in the country. It's the Guilty by Association Truck Show.
Carter is a 2-time world champion chef who was featured on Chopped Grill Masters in 2019. I caught up with him in Joplin to ask him about his trailer.
This is Meat Lover. Going down the road one day, I grew up on a farm and a processing plant my family owned, and I was like, you know what would be cool is a cattle pot. And I went and looked at one, and I sat there and I studied it, and I was like, all right, I can possibly make this happen. So I found one cheap. I put a couple feelers out to buddies that pulled cattle pots and stuff like that, and I found one, and this one was just sitting in a field. I found it for $3,000, and I was like, all right, if it didn't work, I can scrap it and not be hurt. And I ended up I gutted the whole thing. So that's why I was kind of iffy of, is the structure going to hold up going down the road? But I ended up building a whole new structure around it on the inside and then adding all my cooking equipment to it and raising the floors and adding smokers and pellet grills and live fire and everything. And then I was like, well, I got to make this thing look good on the outside. So it became a project. The outside was a big project alone because the trailer was wrecked when I bought it. So I called Merritt. Merritt got me all the right parts and was awesome to work with, and we started fabricating. So I'm a metal fabricator by trade, and I do catering. So I call it the best of both worlds.
Kind of brings a new meaning to like a food truck.
Correct. Yeah. Everybody's like, I tell everybody when I was building it, I was like, yeah, I'm building a new food trailer. And everybody's like, oh, cool. And I didn't hardly post pictures. I did Snapchat just for family and friends and stuff like that. And then when I unveiled it in April, everybody's like, that's a food trailer. Yeah. And that's why a buddy was talking, and I was like, we got to come up with a name. And we were like, Meat Lover. I mean, it's because that's what it's for. It's even got the trolley where we can trolley in fresh cuts of beef and pork and chicken and whatever we feel like throwing down the rail that day. And so, yeah.
That's awesome. So this would have hauled cattle in the past?
Yes, it was a cattle truck. Yep. When I got it, it had rolled over, or not rolled over, but just laid over and skidded on the side of the road. And so they cut the roof open, about a 10-foot area, so the whole roof was destroyed. So I had to replace the whole roof and the rear driver's side of the trailer. So I left some skid marks back there just for nostalgia, and yeah. So
talk to me about what you're doing at this event.
So opening day baseball, I unveiled it, and social media did its job, and a friend of mine posted it on the guy who pulls it for me, posted on his Facebook page, and it got like 7,000 hits that day. And so I've been up to Nebraska doing bull semen for Vogler Semen, and then been all over the country so far, and then Brian from Four States called me, and he was like, hey, he goes, I got something for you. He goes, I got a truck show coming up and I want you. I'm like, and then after talking to Brian, we had a mutual acquaintance. So we started talking and everything. And OOIDA came out to one of my events and was at Midway Ford Body Shop. And it all kind of worked together. They're like, all right, this thing's for real. And yeah, so.
Did you ever imagine when you got this thing built that it would take you all across the country?
I didn't. I mean, it's what I was hoping for. So I can't wait to see what the next few years bring with it. And I already have plans. Hopefully I can build another one and make it even more.
What do you enjoy most about traveling around and feeding people?
I tell you what, I just like, I'm a social butterfly. So I like meeting new people. I like entertaining. I'm an entertainer. That's what I like doing. I like making people fat and happy and eating good food and just hanging out. And I've always had an infatuation with semi-trucks and trailers and everything. So this show is like in my realm. So I love it.
Talk to me about the pig.
Oh, the pig. Brian, everybody saw my social media and stuff like that. And they were like, so you can do whole hogs too? I'm like, yeah, we can do whole hogs. And I go, if we're going to do whole hog, I go, why don't we tattoo your logo on it? And he goes, you can tattoo a hog? I go, yeah, I can tattoo a hog. And he goes, what do you do, like, trace it with a marker? I go, no, we're going to hire a tattoo artist with his ink gun, and he's going to come in and tattoo it. And I go, it's going to look amazing after it's all said and done. And he goes, all right. And he goes, I think I can make this happen. So he called a couple of his sponsors from the show and stuff like that, and they're like, all right, I want my name on that hog. So we made it happen.
That seems like, is that pretty unique, or is that?
No, it is unique. The first time that I know of a hog being tattooed was last year at the American Royal Barbecue. My partner in Aces Wild did it at the American Royal Barbecue in a whole hog competition, and it was amazing. It turned out great. But a whole hog is central. It's a showpiece anyways. Yeah. And we got it running style on here, and can't wait to unveil it tomorrow morning.
And talk to me about what you're smoking it in.
Smoking the whole hog in?
Yeah.
So my good friends from the shed, even though we are competitors, my good friends from the shed, Brad Orson and Brooke, I called them up. I go, all right, the American Royal's the week before. I go, I need Buggy and Scott to leave about 4 days early. I go, can you lose them from the restaurant? And they're like, well, what for? And I'm like, I got this truck show. And we're going to tattoo a hog. I go, and we want the Willis there. This Willis has won Memphis MA World Barbecue Championship before. These guys are phenomenal whole hog cookers and barbecue pitmasters. And so they were like, let's go help Craig out and put on a show.
That was Craig Carter talking about Meat Lover, a livestock trailer that he converted into a food trailer. If you're in the Kansas City area this weekend, you can check out Carter's Trailer and Barbecue. He will be competing at the American Royal World Series of Barbecue, which is the world's largest barbecue competition and the American Royal's largest fundraiser. For more information, you can visit AmericanRoyal.com. For Landline Now, I'm Ashley Blackford. Stay tuned for more after this.
Control your toll costs and eliminate tolling headaches with Prepass Tolls. Prepass Tolls means toll volume discounts. Just one invoice for all tolls and fewer violations. Call 877-878-5970 or go to prepass.com.
Attention all truckers, Dean Michael, the tax doctor here. I want to talk to you about those dreaded tax problems. I know you want to keep on trucking and not even think about them, but let's face it, they're not going away all on their own. You need professional help. I've been helping truckers put their tax problems in the rearview mirror for years. I can help you too. Call me now for a free consultation at 888-557-4020 or go to mytaxhelpmd.com. It's like I always say, keep your eyes on the road, I'll keep mine on the IRS. 888-557-4020.
It's tested and proven. Burn 2.1% less fuel when you balance all wheel ends with Centromatic. Call 800-523-8473 to get the OOIDA discount.
Fuel taxes are going up in a couple states starting October 1st. Welcome back to Landline Now and our weekly state legislative update. Details on those changes right now with the state legislative editor of Landline Magazine, our state legislative expert, Keith Goebel. Keith, how are we doing?
Doing all right, Scott. Good to see you.
Good to see you as well, as always. Before we begin with Alabama and New Jersey, we had a very spirited conversation before the mics got turned on here, Keith. You had some pressing matters.
Which is not unique.
That is true, actually.
Yeah.
You wanted to talk about fuel tax rates, when they go up, how they go up, and this is a process that's a little bit different for each and every state out there.
Yeah, if there's one thing that I'm spirited about, it's fuel tax rate adjustments.
You want to see Keith Goebel get worked up. You start talking about fuel tax rates.
No, I mean, it's a regular occurrence, and of course, folks who drive the road cross country are well aware. But yeah, I know there are states that have automatic adjustments. There are states that have scheduled adjustments. Now, and of course, this is in my head that I think about it this way. Automatic adjustments, essentially whenever you've got states that for years and years they've had rules in place that on a certain time of the year, there is going to be a rate adjustment. Most of the time, it's going to be an increase. There are occasions where there's a decrease. I believe there's around 16 states that have that set up for those automatic adjustments. And then you've got states that I would classify as having scheduled adjustments. I think specifically of Missouri. Gosh, what was it? 3 years ago, they implemented the first of 5 scheduled adjustments as part of legislation that was approved 3 years ago. And once that is over with, which we're about halfway through that process in Missouri, there will not be any adjustments thereafter. But so you've got different ways that states adjust their rates each year. January 1st is the most popular time of the year for a state to implement some sort of an adjustment. July 1st is the next most popular. But October 1st is also on the board, and we have that with Alabama and New Jersey.
Which leads us into those two states and what they're doing on October 1st. And we'll start with Alabama there. We don't usually, when we speak about fuel tax rate increases or decreases, we don't always have a lot of background when it comes to talking about those things. With Alabama, there is some background here. With the change, this has been sort of a long time coming, right?
Yeah, hey, they went 30 years between fuel tax rate changes. In 2019, that was authorized, and they authorized rate increases over the course of several years, 10-cent increase over 3 years. So they went from, a tax rate being in the teens to the point now where they're going to be, at 28 cents for gas, 29 cents for diesel, a 2-cent increase. They're in the process of implementing those rate changes, and it's something that eventually, once the 3 years are up, worth pointing out, this is an every other year thing in Alabama. It's not annually, but it is an every other year thing. So 2023 is one of the years where they have the increases that are scheduled, and then at a certain point, whenever those regular increases end, they're going to implement a indexing increase, which we see in other states. Mm-hmm. And really, that goes back to those automatic adjustments that states have. I mean, for Alabama, once the 10-cent increase is fully implemented for both gas and diesel, they will go have the indexing tied to the the National Highway Construction Index, and will allow for regular increases up to a penny at that point.
So the rate in Alabama, leading up to October 1st was what, 19 cents? Is that right?
Well,
that's got to be one of the lower
going
rates
back
in the nation.
To whenever it was originally approved back in 2019, the tax rate for gas was 18 cents. Diesel was 19 cents.
Wow.
So that it's been increasing every other year essentially since then. So it gets us to where they're going to be this October again. 28 cents, I guess, for gas and 29 for diesel, if I'm recalling those numbers. But yeah, nevertheless, it's something that they wanted to address for years in Alabama, as a lot of other states. Going back to Missouri again, something that states recognized they needed to do something for transportation, and inaction over the course of many, many years resulted in needing to get a significant increase passed, and trying to make it more palatable for consumers is to phase those increases in and then indexing them so they don't have to revisit it in the future. So that's what that's what they did in Alabama. So yeah, with that, obviously a lot of money that's going to be made available or continue to be made available for transportation work, whether that is at the state level or the local.
Yeah, nobody loves seeing the price increase there at the pump, but if that money is going toward improving roads and bridges and everything else out there, especially in Alabama, which again has had a low tax rate there for quite a while, hopefully that will be a welcome thing there in Alabama. Let's move to New Jersey here, Keith, where they're also increasing the tax rate for diesel and for gas starting October 1st. What do we need to know here?
Yeah, New Jersey is one of the states where when you talk about an annual adjustment, it actually It could be an increase or a decrease. Typically, it's always going to be an increase. But yeah, New Jersey, they've got a state law they've had for several years now that essentially it requires that they the state make enough money available to the Transportation Trust Fund to cover essentially $2 billion worth of infrastructure work annually. And they have to essentially forecast for the upcoming year what they're going to need for that $2 billion amount. Year to year, there can be a huge spread in difference. I think back, I want to say during COVID, I believe the price went up, the tax per gallon went up about a dime. And then there was a correction a year ago where the price per gallon decreased by over 8 cents. Now, as we get into October 1st, 2023, it's a little bit, it settled down a bit to the point where it's about almost a penny increase for both gas and diesel. So yeah, it's a complex process that they've approved there in New Jersey. Year to year, you really don't know what you're going to get until they come out with their forecast for what they anticipate is going to be happening over the course of the next 12 months. Fortunately, for 2023, as we go through the next following year, not much of a difference, but about a penny.
And the interesting thing there about New Jersey, too, is that they're basing these prices on projections on how much fuel, I guess, is going to be used each year, right, and sold and used. Mm-hmm. And the reason for the increase this year is that there wasn't as much diesel being consumed, right? Is that the idea behind it?
Yeah, that was one of the points that was brought up in their justification for it. I mean, you have to acknowledge sometimes hearing from state, in this case, the state treasurer, especially whenever they had the 10-cent increase in fuel a few years back, it's like, boy, that's a rough one. That's a rough one to pass. Telling the consumer out there that, hey, this is why it's happening. Even though there often are calls whenever you have extreme price increases, calls for a governor to step in and take executive action to avert that. But in the case with the New Jersey, I mean, they are tied in with what is now a 7-year-old law that requires them to annually have that money available to the Transportation Trust Fund, essentially no matter what the cost is.
Yeah, it's interesting how each of these states approach this issue in a bit of a different way. Keith, if people want more information on these stories, they can check out your work on landline.media. We appreciate your time.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Our thanks to Keith Goebel of Landline Magazine, and our thanks to you for joining us as well. We've got another Landline now right around the bend, so we hope to see you then. Until next time, take care.
Thanks for listening. Be sure to like and subscribe. If you want more content, go to landline.media to get updated news, information, and archived editions of our show. Once again, that's landline.media.
I'm a dad,
a son,
a husband,
wife.
I'm a writer,
photographer.
I farm.
I'm a veteran.
I love old cars, fishing,
My kids.
chrome.
And I am a professional truck driver.
And together, we are OOIDA.
OOIDA was founded by truckers to stand up and speak on behalf of truckers. We've done that by combining the individual voices of our members into a single, powerful voice. Protecting your interests, defending your rights.
Join us.
Make your voice heard. Join OOIDA, the Owner-Operator Independent Drivers Association. Call 1-800-444-5791 or visit OOIDA.com.